Apple did not call it virtual reality. Apple called it spatial computing. And that was not an accident. Because Apple was not trying to sell a gadget. It was trying to rename the future. For decades, Apple has been one of the most powerful companies in the world because it does something most companies cannot do. It does not simply create products. It creates categories people want to belong to. The iPod was not just an MP3 player. It made music feel personal. The iPhone was not just a phone. It changed what a phone was allowed to become. The Apple Watch was not just a watch. It turned health, notifications, and identity into something you could wear. Apple's greatest power has never been only technology. It is meaning. Apple makes technology feel inevitable. That is why Vision Pro mattered so much. Because when Apple enters a new category, the world pays attention. Investors pay attention. Competitors pay attention. Developers pay attention. Consumers pay attention. And the market starts asking the same question: is this the next iPhone moment? That was the expectation. Vision Pro was supposed to show that Apple could still create the future. But this time, something felt different. The technology was impressive. The design was premium. The experience was futuristic. The demos looked almost unreal. But after the first wave of excitement, a harder question started to appear. What is this actually for? Not in a demo, not in a keynote, not in a controlled Apple Store experience, but in real life, on an ordinary day, in an ordinary home, for an ordinary person. That is where the Vision Pro problem begins, because the most dangerous thing in technology is not building something too advanced. It is building something too advanced before the habit exists. Apple did not launch a bad product. It launched a product that asked people to change their behavior before most people had a strong reason to do it. And that is a very expensive question to ask. At $3,499, Vision Pro was not priced like a test. It was priced like a statement. It told the market, this is premium, this is serious, this is Apple's vision of the future. But price does more than collect money. Price creates expectations. When a product costs this much, people do not simply ask whether it is cool, they ask whether it belongs in their life. They ask whether it replaces something. They ask whether it solves a problem big enough to justify the cost. And with Vision Pro, that answer was not obvious enough. That is why this story is not just about Apple. It is about the difference between innovation and adoption. Innovation is when a company builds something new. Adoption is when people change their lives around it. And those are not the same thing. Apple proved that it could build an incredible device, but it did not prove that millions of people needed to wear one every day. That gap is where many futuristic products struggle. They win the demo. They lose the habit. They amaze people for 10 minutes, but they do not become part of the morning routine. They become something people respect, admire, and talk about, but do not buy. That is the brutal difference between attention and demand. Attention says, that looks amazing. Demand says, I need this in my life. Vision Pro had attention, but demand was harder. And the reason is deeper than price alone. Because Apple was not selling only hardware, it was selling a new behavior. Wearing a computer on your face, watching movies inside a headset, working inside floating screens, taking calls through a device that separates you from the room around you. That might be powerful, but it is also socially strange. Technology does not win only because it is advanced. It wins when people can imagine themselves using it without feeling weird. That is where the iPhone was different. People already carried phones. People already sent messages. People already listened to music. People already took photos. The iPhone compressed existing behaviors into one better object. It did not ask the world to understand a new ritual from scratch. It made an old ritual feel inevitable. Vision Pro did something harder. It asked people to imagine a new ritual. And new rituals are difficult, especially when they are expensive. Especially when they are worn on the face, especially when they require people to step into a product category that many consumers still associate with gaming, isolation, or novelty. This is the hidden mistake. Apple tried to sell the next computing era before the everyday reason was strong enough. And even Apple's brand power could not fully solve that, because brand power can make people curious. But it cannot force a habit. A powerful brand can make people try. It can make people watch reviews. It can make people line up at stores. It can make a product feel important. But if the product does not become useful often enough, curiosity fades. That is what makes Vision Pro so fascinating. People were not unimpressed. Many were amazed. They called the displays beautiful. They described the interface as futuristic. They said the experience felt like looking into the future of computing. But amazement is not the same as attachment. A product becomes powerful when people miss it after they stop using it. That is when technology becomes a habit. That is when it becomes sticky. That is when it stops being impressive and starts becoming necessary. Vision Pro struggled because many people could admire it without needing it. And that is a dangerous place for a premium product to be. Admiration without necessity does not create mass adoption. It creates expensive curiosity. For Apple, this created a strange situation. The company had built one of the most advanced consumer devices ever released. But the market still had to be convinced that the product category deserved to exist at scale. That is a heavy burden. Because Apple was not only selling Vision Pro, it was selling spatial computing itself. And when you are selling an entire new category, you need more than quality. You need timing. You need use cases. You need developers. You need content. You need social acceptance. You need price accessibility. You need a reason that appears every single day. The iPhone had that. The Mac had that. The AirPods had that. The Apple Watch eventually found that through health, fitness, and notifications. Vision Pro was still searching for its daily reason. That is the problem with building the future. The future does not become real when the company announces it. It becomes real when ordinary people start using it without thinking. That is where Apple's greatest strength became a challenge. Apple is so powerful that people expect every major product to feel inevitable. But inevitability cannot be announced. It has to be earned. And Vision Pro had to earn it in a market where the question was not just, is this the best headset? The question was, why would I wear a headset at all? That is a much harder question. Because if consumers do not believe in the category, being the best product in the category is not enough. You can build the most beautiful door in the world, but if people do not want to enter the room, the door does not matter. This is why cheaper competitors became important, not because every competitor was better than Apple, but because they exposed the emotional problem. If someone could buy a much cheaper headset and still experience games, media, fitness, or mixed reality, then Vision Pro had to justify why it was worth several times more. And Apple's answer was quality, premium design, advanced displays, spatial interface, ecosystem integration. But for many consumers, quality alone was not enough, because the category itself was still not essential. That is the difference between a premium product and a premium solution. A premium product is beautiful. A premium solution solves a problem so well that the price begins to make sense. Vision Pro looked like a premium product, but for mass consumers, it had not yet become a premium solution. That is why the story changed. At first, Vision Pro looked like a breakthrough. Then it started looking like a question. Who is this for? How often will people use it? What app makes it unavoidable? What problem does it solve better than a phone, a laptop, a television, or an iPad? Why wear it instead of simply looking at a screen? These questions matter because consumers do not adopt technology only because it is impressive. They adopt technology when it makes the old way feel inconvenient. The iPhone made old phones feel limited. AirPods made wired headphones feel outdated. The Apple Watch made some people feel more connected to their health and notifications. But Vision Pro did not yet make laptops, TVs, phones, or tablets feel obsolete for most people. It added a new possibility, but it did not remove an old pain. And products that add possibility often move slower than products that remove pain. That is a key Vexonomy lesson. People do not pay premium prices for the future just because the future looks beautiful. They pay when the future solves a problem they can feel. If the problem is not felt, the price feels heavier. That is what happened with Vision Pro. The more expensive the product, the clearer the need must be. And the need was not clear enough. For early adopters, creators, developers, and tech enthusiasts, Vision Pro was exciting. But Apple does not become Apple by selling only to early adopters. Apple becomes Apple when a product moves from impressive to obvious. The iPhone became obvious. AirPods became obvious. The Apple Watch became more obvious over time. Vision Pro was not obvious yet. It was spectacular. But spectacular is not the same as inevitable. And that is the trap. A product can be too good to ignore, but still not useful enough to own. A product can feel like the future, but still arrive before the market has built a life around it. That is why reports about production cuts and weaker demand mattered. They were not just supply chain stories. They were signals. Signals that the market was not absorbing the future as quickly as Apple expected. Signals that excitement did not automatically become adoption. Signals that even the world's most powerful brand can misjudge how fast people are willing to change. This does not mean Vision Pro is dead. That would be too simple. Apple rarely plays only one move. Sometimes the first version is expensive. Sometimes the first version is limited. Sometimes the first version is for developers, enthusiasts, and the top of the market. The first Apple Watch was not perfect. The first iPhone had limits. The first Mac was not mass adoption overnight. Apple often uses early products to create a path. But Vision Pro is different because the gap is larger. The gap between the demo and daily use. The gap between the price and the habit. The gap between the vision and the market. And that gap is where the pressure lives. Because Apple's brand is built on making technology feel simple. Vision Pro, for all its brilliance, still asks people to explain it. And the more a consumer product needs explanation, the harder it becomes to scale. The best consumer technology does not only say, "Look what this can do." It says, "You already know why you need this." That is the line Vision Pro had not fully crossed. The product showed people a future, but it did not yet make the present feel broken without it. That is why the $3,500 price mattered so much. Not because luxury pricing is always wrong. Apple knows how to sell expensive products. But expensive Apple products usually sit inside habits people already understand. A MacBook is expensive, but people understand work. An iPhone is expensive, but people understand communication. An iPad is expensive, but people understand screens. AirPods are expensive, but people understand listening. Vision Pro was expensive, and people were still trying to understand the behavior. That is a much harder sell, because when a product is both expensive and unfamiliar, the buyer needs a stronger emotional reason. Status can help. Curiosity can help. Apple loyalty can help. But mass adoption needs something deeper. It needs repetition. A reason to use it again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Without repetition, even the most impressive device becomes a showcase. Something you demonstrate. Something you let guests try. Something you use for special moments. But not something that becomes invisible in your life. The most successful technologies eventually become invisible. Not because they disappear, but because they become normal. You stop thinking about the smartphone. You just reach for it. You stop thinking about wireless earbuds. You just put them on. You stop thinking about streaming. You just press play. That is when technology wins. Vision Pro had not become invisible. It was still too present, too noticeable, too expensive, too socially heavy, too difficult for ordinary people to forget they were using it. And in consumer technology, that matters. The future has to feel magical at first, but eventually, it has to feel normal. That is the journey Apple had not completed, and this is where the deeper business lesson appears. Big companies do not only fail when they build bad products. Sometimes they struggle because they build brilliant products for a behavior that has not matured yet. The product may be ahead, the market may be behind, but if the gap is too wide, the business still suffers. Because markets do not reward being early forever, they reward being early at the right time. That is a painful truth for innovators. Being first is not enough. Being best is not enough. Being impressive is not enough. You have to be needed. And need is not created by keynote language. Need is created by repeated pain, repeated desire, repeated use, repeated proof. Vision Pro had proof of capability, but it still needed proof of necessity. That is why this story matters beyond Apple. Every creator, entrepreneur, and investor wants to build the future. But the future is not valuable just because it is advanced. It is valuable when people are ready to reorganize their lives around it. That is the real test, not whether people say wow, whether they come back after the wow fades. That is where Apple faced its hardest challenge, because Apple is not judged like a startup. A startup can be early, a startup can experiment, a startup can fail quietly. Apple cannot. When Apple launches a new category, the world expects inevitability. The world expects polish. The world expects adoption. The world expects the product to make sense almost immediately. That expectation is part of Apple's power, but it is also a trap. Because when people expect magic, even excellence can feel disappointing if it does not become essential. Vision Pro was excellent in many ways, but excellence did not automatically turn into urgency. And without urgency, a $30,500 product becomes very easy to admire from a distance. That is the danger. When people respect your product but do not need it, you do not have a mass market yet. You have a museum piece, a developer platform, a luxury experiment, a glimpse of what might come next, but not yet the next iPhone. And that is why the phrase, "the next iPhone moment," became dangerous. Because the iPhone did not succeed only because it was futuristic. It succeeded because it arrived at the intersection of many existing needs: communication, internet, music, photos, apps, touch. Portability. The iPhone did not ask people to imagine a new life. It gave them a better version of the life they already had. Vision Pro asked for more imagination, and imagination is expensive, especially when the device itself is expensive too. This is the part many companies misunderstand. Consumers do not buy the future. They buy a better version of the present. If the future feels too far away from their current life, they hesitate. And hesitation is deadly for a product trying to become a platform, because platforms need users. Users attract developers. Developers create apps. Apps create use cases. Use cases create habits. Habits create adoption. And adoption creates power. If the first step is too slow, the whole flywheel weakens. That is why price, comfort, content, and daily use all matter. They are not separate issues. They are all part of the same adoption machine. If the price is high, fewer users enter. If fewer users enter, fewer developers prioritize it. If fewer developers prioritize it, fewer must-have apps appear. If fewer must-have apps appear, consumers have fewer reasons to buy. That is how a product can be technologically amazing and commercially difficult at the same time. It is not enough to build the device. You have to build the reason, and that is what Apple still has to prove. Can Vision Pro, or the next version of this idea, become something people do not just try, but return to? Can it become lighter? Can it become cheaper? Can it find the killer use case? Can it become socially normal? Can it stop being a futuristic object and become a daily tool? Those are the real questions, and if Apple eventually solves them, Vision Pro may be remembered differently, not as a failure, but as an expensive first step. A product that arrived before the market was ready, a device that showed the direction before the road was built. That is possible. But for now, the lesson is clear. The most powerful company in consumer technology discovered that even Apple cannot force the future to arrive on command. It can design it, it can package it, it can name it, it can price it, it can demonstrate it beautifully, but it cannot make people need it before the need becomes real. That is the limit of brand power. Brand can create belief. Brand can create attention. Brand can create trust. Brand can make people listen. But brand cannot permanently replace utility. At some point, the product must become useful enough to survive without the keynote. That is the moment innovation becomes power. Not when the room applauds. Not when the demo goes viral. Not when reviewers say it feels futuristic. But when ordinary people build it into their lives. Vision Pro has not fully crossed that line. And that is why Apple's $3,500 bet became one of the most fascinating business lessons of the modern tech era. Because it shows that the future is not won by the company that imagines it first. It is won by the company that makes it feel necessary. That is the Vexonomy lesson. Innovation gets attention. Necessity creates adoption. Attention makes people look. Necessity makes people return. And in business, return behavior is where real power lives. Apple built one of the most impressive products in the world. But impressive was not enough. Because people do not change their lives for impressive. They change their lives for useful, for obvious, for necessary. And until spatial computing becomes that, Apple's vision will remain exactly that. A vision. Not yet the habit. Not yet the platform. Not yet the next iPhone. Apple may still win this category, but if it does, it will not be because Vision Pro looked like the future. It will be because one day, the future finally becomes something people cannot imagine living without. And that is the difference between a product people admire and a product people need. If you want more stories about how powerful companies make billion-dollar bets, how markets expose weakness, and how money, behavior, status, and belief shape the modern world, this is Vexonomy, the psychology of wealth and power. And the next giant is already making a mistake most people cannot see yet.